Hey, this is Steve, and this is Luke, and welcome back to another episode of Restless the Podcast. Episode 8. You know, everybody's story is unique, and they're special. They're like fingerprints. Each one has their own identity. We would hope that you would consider getting up with us and coming on the show and telling your story, because there's incredible power in people's story. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. Contact us at info@restlesspodcast.com, or you can go to our website, and that's restlesspodcast.com, and go to Tell Your Story and leave some information about yourself. We would love to hear about you. And for those of you who have given us 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, thank you very much. We've had some good positive feedback, and we'll continue to bring these shows as folks come to us. So thank you. Luke, we have an incredible guy tonight that has reached out to us and offered to tell his story, and we're thankful for that. Bob, you know, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. We want to thank you for that. Luke, tell us a little bit about Bob.
All right, our guest tonight is Bob. Bob is 58 years old and a father of 3, and grew up in Central Maryland. And throughout life, Bob had been asking the question of what is faith, and generally searching. From being in various different kinds of churches, from trying to further and deepen his understanding, Bob's coming on to tell us a little bit about what he's learned along the way regarding how he understands the Bible, and most importantly, not just the idea that we can know of God, but the idea that we can know God personally and that he wants to know us too.
Bob, we are excited to have you tonight, and you know, we've heard a little bit of your story in advance, and we look forward to hearing the whole thing. But we would characterize you, and maybe you would do the same, as a man on a journey in search of faith, or in search of truth. Does that sound fair?
It does. It does.
So would you kind of take us by the hand and take us, you know, along with you on that journey, perhaps rewinding a little bit to the beginning, and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. You know, I had a normal, average childhood, and I guess the only thing, but it was like kind of normal back then. My folks did split up when I was in like 6th grade, which caused a little bit of, you know, turmoil and, you know, different ways of dealing with things and looking at things. I guess, and then it was, but, you know, I had 2 very good parents. I did leave home when I was 16, which, you know, is kind of not normal, but that's what I did. I just kind of moved in with friends. I still graduated high school and did all the normal things. I, you know, never really got in trouble. You know, and I thank my parents for that. I give that to them for doing that. I met my wife when I was probably 20 years old. And, you know, I knew right away she was the one. And, you know, we did get married. I was married at 21. Father at 24. And, you know, it just, you know, from all the things that I went through when I was young, not having a dad that, you know, lived at the house and that kind of stuff, it instilled in me then, and it's still with me today, of my job is to take care of my family. You know, those at that time, my family was number one. There was, you know, yes, I believed in God, but I never put it in never put him first. Family was first. And I know now that was not right. But I was married for 18 years. And we were very young when we got married, and basically we just kind of grew apart. And, it was to the point where we just couldn't live together anymore. And it was definitely the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was devastated. And it angered me. It angered me that, I spent all my time working. When I was, I would say in 1999, I had a 3-year-old son. So, I had a house, I had a new car, couple cars actually. I was with my, at that time, I mean, she was the one for me. Of course, we all have problems. Marriage is a very difficult two-way street that, we were going down, and it just became too much. So when that ended, I did not take it very well. I ended up, moving back to Maryland. I was living in Virginia at the time. I came back with family just to get some support. Because it was just burned into me that I did not want to repeat what I went through. I did not want my son going through what I went through when I was a kid. And, it was just, I don't want to make light of that because it was very devastating for me. I mean, there was a point that, I didn't want to continue living, to be perfectly honest with you. But I did get through that.
When you say not continue living, do you mean like actively suicidal or just apathetic?
I don't think I could actually follow through with it. There was a care factor.
Just apathy toward life in general.
It was just something I couldn't fathom. It was a total failure, and I took that all on myself. I didn't want to blame anybody but me because, I'm the one that made the decisions. Back then, I was young, confident, knew what I wanted, and was willing to work for it. I mean, I worked 80 hours a week, every week. I was never home. That was the big thing. But, in my mind at that time, that's what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be taking care of my family, gathering the things that we needed. And when it didn't work, it just it destroyed me. It did.
And you would connect part of that breakup to how many hours you worked.
I would because I was, when you're not there, you're not fulfilling, your wife's needs, wants, small child,
How old was your son when that happened?
I think he was at 3 when we really, we separated a couple times, actually, but not for any length of time. But we kind of knew that this time was going to be different.
Yeah.
And
you had said early on that you were 6 years old when your parents split.
Yeah.
And now...
And to be perfectly honest with you, he may have been around that age, to be honest with you. I think he might have been. I might have my dates wrong.
But the point here is you're kind of repeating what happened to you as a kid.
I know, and it's exactly what I did not want to happen. My wife just, with all the talking that I did, it just wasn't enough. But
it made for a very difficult time for you.
It did. It really did. And I thought, from that point, it was just never, that was going to be the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was almost like a death. It really was. And I know I've heard people talk about divorces being like that, and it truly was for me. And
but you, for the most part, were taking all the blame.
I did.
Yeah. So how were you feeling inside?
Well, it was a major, major blow. It was a major failure in my mind. It was repeating something that I swore I would never do. I would never, ever do that to my son.
Yeah.
And and that, after that, it took me, I don't know, maybe 2 years to become, to where I could function normally. I mean, I never stopped working. I will, hats off to the company that I work for that, because if I was the boss, I wouldn't have kept me.
Sure.
Because I was,
and you had moved now back to Maryland.
Back to Maryland. I transferred the company willingly right away. As soon as they could find me a spot, transferred me back to Maryland.
Were you splitting time with your son between yourself?
I did. I went up on weekends, and I wasn't even capable of even doing that right away. That's how bad it was. But after I got my feet under me a little bit, and I would make sure that I had my stuff together for him, and but when it came to me, I was, I started drinking a lot. After looking back on it now, there was probably a good 4 to 5 years. I still worked. I was never late. I never called out. But I did. I spent a lot of time drinking.
Would you consider yourself a functional alcoholic?
I did. I was. Yeah.
And why did you do that?
Thinking back on it now, it was, it's foolish. But it just eased the pain. I mean, there's no other way of, saying it. It loosened me up to where I could talk to people. I met a lot of people. Some of them it probably would have been a good idea if I didn't meet, but that's the that's the path I took. And I did that, and and I met a lot of good people too, and I did meet somebody else, and had a relationship, and it was just what I needed. We made each other complete. And then I stopped drinking, and then it was different. It just was different.
What do you mean?
The only way that I can think of it now is that we were having such fun. We didn't take time to really know each other and know, likes, dislikes. When you're drinking, everything's a party. Vacations. Wake up 7:00 in the morning and have half a bottle of scotch with your coffee. At the time, it was great, I thought. But there was other factors in there, and I ended up leaving that area and ended up moving up west in Maryland, and then I met my current wife, and again, it was love at first sight. Somebody that I felt very comfortable with, and I could be myself. I didn't have to drink. She was not a drinker, so it was what I needed at the time. So we very quickly developed a relationship, and she was actually had been divorced, and moved into a new place, and she had a son that was also something that that obviously that I was missing, but I didn't ever look at it to the point where this was a replacement. It was more of a bonus kind of thing. We moved in together, or I actually moved in with her, because that was a running joke. The entire time I was divorced, I was homeless, but we just we moved very quickly, and before you know it, we were engaged to be married. Everything in my life at that point was 100%, on top of the world. All my troubles, except that deep desire and still failure to my son. That and that's still with me today.
How can I ask you? What was your relationship like with your son at the time?
I know he was young. I'm not and this probably doesn't sound very good, but I'm not a big fan of small kids. Not that I'm was all the time tired. I was working, come home. I loved him. We loved to do things together, but I wasn't a big fan of small kids, and he was a small kid. So yeah, I'd still say we had a great relationship. I mean, I remember I took him to the bus stop every morning. I remember doing that. Things like that. Ride his bike. Used to take him to ride his bike, and remote control airplanes. All that kind of father-son stuff. Fishing. So now I kind of lost where I'm at. But anyway, on top of the world, it was, say, 2003. I was engaged to be married. Plans all set. My son he was at that time, I want to say he was 15. At work one day, it was November the 11th. At work one day, I got a phone call. It was my ex-father-in-law. Said that I needed to come right away. Nick was sick. It didn't register. He was working with his father. His grandfather has a automotive shop. Nick was working there, 15 years old, just after school kind of thing, and on weekends. And I just remember him saying, "You need to come." For him to even call me, I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. And I remember somebody was in the office I was in, and, I don't know if I was probably like I am now, sobbing a little bit. And I just remember the guy, I still see him today. He kind of looks at me kind of weird at times, but he said, "Are you all right?" And I just grabbed him and hugged him and left. And I came home and called Kelly, my wife. Or she wasn't my wife at the time, but I said, "I need you, and I need you right now. We have to go to Virginia." And we did that. Went to the hospital, and they at that time didn't really know exactly what happened, other than he couldn't move his legs. And it wasn't a very well-equipped hospital for that kind of problem. So then he was transferred from there to Virginia Tech. It's the same hospital that Christopher Reeves went when he had his accident. So then I knew things weren't well. So I when that happened, that was like the following day. And of course, then I'm racing all the way to Virginia Tech. Back-to-back speeding tickets within 10 miles, and and then they finally did tell me that that he had a stroke, that he was lucky to be alive, and that he was going to be paralyzed from his waist down. But I just, then I knew true defeat And even what I forgot to say was before I even called Kelly, when I came home from work the first day that this happened, I remember walking out on, had just had a big deck put on the back of the townhouse. And I remember walking out there and just screaming to the top of my lungs, why? Why would you do this to me, Lord? Or how could you let this happen? Just as loud as I could. I'm sure the neighbors were rattled. That's how loud it was. Looking back at that now, I mean, it tells me a couple things. For one, I knew he was there. I'm talking to him, even after that. But at that point, that day, and for several years after, I didn't want to talk to him. I just, that's my son. That's my everything. That's my number one. And but he, through all of this, I mean, his attitude was, you never know something was even wrong with him by talking to him. It was to the point where it was actually a little scary because he took it so well, so fast. Looking back at that now, he had company.
Mm. Yeah.
So, Nick today is married, still going to school. There's nothing that he doesn't, when he wants to do something, he does it.
Hmm.
Kayaking, just did that. I think he said last. Sometimes I don't like to hear what he does. But yeah, just said he had a weekend of kayaking, which I thought was very cool, but as a father, a little sketchy. So again, I'm, feeling kind of good. Things are working out.
This is after Nick has gotten out of the hospital, is recovering somewhat.
Yeah. He you could, I don't even know how to describe what he has gone through and the way he has taken it. I mean, he's like my hero now. I mean, something devastating like that happens to you. And I remember talking to him, and I know I had help talking to him because I think when I did, I got through. I just told him that, you were dealt a very severe hand. But, you need to work through this.
Yeah.
And just by talking to him, I mean, he didn't really even need me to tell him that. I mean, he was already working through it.
So Bob, take us back to that moment in the hospital. Here's your 15-year-old son. He's suffered a devastating physical trauma. Yet in some respects, it sounds like maybe he was doing better than you.
Oh, he most definitely was. You would, like I said, by talking, if you were just listening to voices, yeah, I was the guy that was in trouble, not him.
You should have been in a bed next to him, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what was your relationship like with him at that moment?
I was just scared to death, and I know he was scared to death.
Yeah.
But, at the time, it was all about him. His mother was there. Her boyfriend was there. I mean, it wasn't about Bob. It wasn't about anybody but him.
Yeah.
And it was a devastating time.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, much, much worse than divorce or anything like that.
And you were having problems figuring out why is something else in my life that is so hard for me?
My number one, not just something. This was, if you want to take me, I understand that,
But don't touch him.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah.
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 So what happens? What happens after that moment on the deck where you're screaming and you're hollering and
I was basically done with lost again. I wasn't, I never regained my strength that I had before that. Yeah, and even to this day, I don't think I have that.
How about just with God? I mean,
I did not want anything didn't want to hear about it, didn't want to think about it.
The answer might be obvious, but you tell us why. Why wouldn't you want to hear about God?
Because in my mind, he was punishing me, not him.
Yeah.
He's just a kid. I mean, 15 years old.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, like I said, he's remarkable, still is. And I've, with the things that have happened since then, I'm, regaining my relationship with God. I joined we call ourselves Band of Brothers. It's just a one night a week guy gathering, and we talk about the troubles that we're having and how God is playing a hand in helping us, guiding us. And it's exactly what I needed again.
Yeah, but you were involved sometime in the past too with the church, right?
I was.
Yeah.
I was.
What was that like for you? I mean, or was it just kind of one of those check off the box things?
Well, yeah, it was a little bit. No, it was a little bit more than that. My wife at the time's father was actually a member, and it was something we could do as a family.
Mm-hmm.
They're very the church was very family oriented. Gatherings, picnics, and helping each other. I enjoyed it. It was very time consuming. It did cut into the limited amount of time that I was able to spend at home anyway when I wasn't working. It was, at the time, it was a life-changing thing. I stopped smoking, stopped drinking coffee. Coffee was the big one for me. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But when the marriage ended, that ended. I didn't ask for help. Didn't Why? I have no idea. I did not ask God for help at all then. I was done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just was. I wasn't ready to ask for help.
Yeah.
And then after that happened, my son, I wasn't ready. Didn't want to hear any of that. Didn't want to think about it. So
Yeah.
But 2017, I think that's right. Got together with the band of brothers and met a great bunch of guys and answered a whole lot of questions and reestablished my love for God again, to the point where it probably wasn't as strong as it is now, even back then. It's the understanding of things. It's the way that he's opened doors and answered questions and guided me through this. 2018, I think this was after I joined, I think. Yeah, it definitely was. Was diagnosed with asbestosis. Another one of those blows, but it was me, so nothing like the other events. Doctor was very blunt and very, upfront. This is bad. This is very bad. You need to, basically get your house in order, kind of thing. You need to do this. You need to do that. It definitely made me slow down, made me look at things, made me think of things that I might not be able to do that I had planned to do with my son, with my wife, find my purpose, and it just led me. And I've always been one of those, I'm a mechanic, always been a mechanic of some type. So I look at things a little different than the average person does. I've always had a love for searching. If I interested in the big thing that got me, even to the point before the group that I joined, was the James River. Because I like fishing, so I always wanted to fish the James River, and was Googling it, and I ran across that the James River was named after King James. And then I read about King James, and that led back to God again. So, it was like I was being led, even after I joined the group. One of the guys mentioned Greg Laurie, a daily morning scripture reading. Signed up for that. Led to I think at that time he had something about man, I'm drawing a blank here. the Bullet. What was his name? Give me a minute.
Sure. Yeah. You had said once, Bob, that coming a part of this group, that there was a point in time to where you felt like you had shifted gears, that actually you came to know Christ as a Savior. Is that true?
It is. It is. That's where I was going with this. For whatever reason, I can't remember his name, but movie star drove the movie Bullet, died of asbestosis.
Yeah.
Didn't know that at the time, but anyway, there was a video about the car, the Mustang, and
Steve
McQueen. Never knew how he died. Never, well, that's what he died from. And I found that out when I watched this movie. There again, it's another sign. I mean, it's like I'm being led now, and I'm also have been given sight where I see things that I would have not seen before. I take the time to listen to where I probably wouldn't have done before. And I feel I'm being guided, not a clue where I'm going. I'm not trying to say I do, but I felt compelled to come here after your last podcast and
last episode.
Yeah. And,
Kurt.
Kurt. And, tell my story to where it could help somebody that these groups, if you're searching at all, I'm not saying hit the churches or anything like that, but you ought to at least consider, joining a little prayer group, whatever you want to call it, to where you can go and get other people's views, see where you are, with a group of people. You're going to find that you're not too way out of line with everybody else. And
did you also feel, Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt, did you also feel less alone in this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not, and I think that's what I've felt almost all my life is you're alone.
Alone.
When you're young,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
You're big, you're strong, fearless. But that changes.
Do you think that loneliness for men is still, is a real thing, isn't it?
No, most definitely.
That we can act like, hey, we're cool, but men struggle with loneliness as well. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can lead into a lot of problems. And
when you left Virginia and came towards...
That was probably the number one, but the number one reason I started drinking the way I was drinking. I was, I'm not an outgoing person, so I'm not one of them people, life of the party kind of guy, but you give me 3 or 4 scotches and we're dancing, we're doing something, having a conversation, to where I probably wouldn't before.
Mm-hmm. So you had a partner in the bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
But that's changed in the respect.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're part of a group. You got some relationships going there, and you would say, what's been the defining moment for you in being a part of that?
the defining moment is just realizing the blessings that I've been given, even to the point where, I hope and pray that I can be forgiven for. I don't think I cursed God. As a matter of fact, I know I didn't. I just walked away from him. I showed him, kind of thing. So, I just hope I can be forgiven for that and all the other wrongs that I've done in my life. And I want very much to bring my son to God.
Yeah.
That's my number one goal. So.
A question I had for you, Bob, just after listening to some of that. If you were to think about just some of the differences you saw between being in and out affiliated with church as opposed to spending time with this group of individuals, what would be some of the things that come to mind that are the immediate, just here's what's different?
Well, the difference that I see, it's a dedicated time. It's a dedicated number of people. I don't think men are, we're not as open as women are. We're not going to go out, shopping or anything like that. But, to go and meet with 8 or 10 guys once a week for a couple hours and talk about the problems that we're having, solutions that your brother might give you, it's worthwhile. It's the other thing would be the not bashing church or anything. They're the rules. We don't really have rules. I mean, we respect each other and we respect why we're there.
So you'd say just the sincerity.
Yes. We're not there, parking cars. We're not there, passing plates around or, all that kind of stuff we are there to learn. We read the Bible. We learn about the Bible. We learn how to help our fellow brothers. We, it's for me, it's number one right now. Yeah. It really is.
What and similar question, but a little bit different, just changing the focus. Back in those church days, what would you say you knew or you thought you knew God to be then versus who you know God to be now?
I think I just was able to, I have more time to read the Bible today than I did then. We were very active. It was a very active church. We were, everything had a schedule. You did this, you did that, you went here, you went there. This brother needs help with his fence. This, it was very, very, I thought it was very cool. It was something very new for me then. But I don't know if it was me or it was probably just not being 100% into reading the Bible. Yeah. And that's what we primarily do in the group. And it's just, I think that it brings you in line with who you actually are and it brings you in line with your relationship with God. I mean, that, with that being said, I mean, it's just something that I felt compelled that I had to do this. If one person takes 1 minute to consider this, I mean, it's worth it.
So you'd say by this point, what you might call your pilgrimage of discovery when it comes to faith and spirituality and the God question, that God has gone from being just a concept to be understood to being a person that you could know?
Yes. Yeah. And it's not that I didn't know he wasn't there before. I knew he was, and I tried to think before I came here. I tried to think, when I realized it must have been so long ago. I must have been a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, we did go to Sunday school or something along those lines, and I remember that I was very good at memorizing verses and stuff like that. Not today, but I was then. But, something went south at the church, and my mom put an end to that. There was something going on there.
Yeah.
And
Heard that story before.
Yeah. So that was kind of the end of that. But, I don't remember when, I kind of always knew, and I've always had I don't even know what you would call it. I've always had that I was going to be given an opportunity. The Lord was going to give me an opportunity.
Wow.
And I don't have the answer. I don't have the rest of that sentence yet.
Yeah. That's Bob, I really like that. Here's a couple questions, and you've done an incredible, wonderful job just telling your story, and it's unique. And now I want you to talk to a couple different people. First is maybe men who, because the truth is, in everybody's story, we put ourselves at some point in it, and we've experienced it. We've felt that pain. We've had that thing occur to us in one shape or form. What do you say to men, in particularly, tonight, about hope, about future, even in light of the things that you've had to struggle with, and even lately with the diagnosis that you've had regarding your lungs? What do you say to them? Where does hope come from?
I just think that, we have I'm saying we have a strong will to do things our way. And we have a strong, I don't need help with that. I can take care of that. And I'm not saying it can't be done. It's probably not going to be done right.
Sure.
There'd be no instructions read. But if you get with a group of guys that, are searching for truth, and that's, that's another factor in there. You go with what you can go to any bookstore and pick a Bible up. That's what you go with. What's in the book. Don't.
What does it really say?
Yeah. Yes. And I think that could be your guide right there. And when you get, like I said, you get 6 or 8 guys together and they're concentrated on learning what it actually says. I mean, it gives you confidence. It gives you an understanding. It gives you another team player. And you got the ultimate captain on that. So
I always said that sometimes just going into Scripture just helps the world make sense that day.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it does answer a lot of questions. It's opened a lot of things for me.
Right.
It just has.
And that's in part because you're with a group of guys trying to figure out the same thing. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you feel like, they got your back?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Almost feels like it's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah. And it's, it's kind of, I kind of went into this with, didn't know anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of knew one guy, and I think it works out better like that.
Yeah.
You don't need to know him. You're not there just for that. Your primary reason is, I want to find out about myself. I want to find out where I fit in, and this is by reading the Bible and understanding what it says. It helps you find out where you are and who you are. It has for me.
And in that, you find hope?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a hopeful man?
Still searching,
Still
but
searching.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever stop that.
Great. And here's one more question, and this might be a little bit tougher for you. What would you say to Nick? What would you leave him right now as his dad? What's your message for the future?
I think of that a lot. My number one for him is I want to bring him to the Lord. I want him to understand that he is not alone, and let him know that the strength that he is showing still today, the Lord is there, whether he realizes it or not. He's there and he's helping him. I don't know why things happened like that. I just don't. But I have a lot of fears because, today's world is so different. We've always been able to, in the past, you could raise your kids and them do a little bit better than your parents did. I'm not sure what today's is a possible. I don't know. Yeah. I don't have that answer.
Yeah.
So those two things, and I do want him to understand that that I loved him, and I do love him, and the biggest thing is he need to get him mixed up with the Lord. That's all.
Yeah. And here's the last one. The doctor recently had told you kind of need to get your house in order. And really, none of us know how long that is, and Lord willing, it's a lot longer. But how do you do that? I mean, what's your word about doing that, and what's your perspective of death now, and how has that changed?
Well, like I said, it made me stop, slow down, and when you do that, and with the minor things that the Lord has lined up for me now, like the group, it's made me slow down. It's made me research why. Made me so where I can see things that I just wouldn't or couldn't see before. And that the original diagnosis was very grim. I've since had another one that isn't so grim. Yes, I have that disease, but it's not as grim as what the first doctor said. Yes, I did. There are some things that I need to correct. I need to stop smoking, which I have not 100% done yet, which is a big factor.
Yeah. But you feel like in many respects, if today was our last day, or my last day, but in this case, your last day, that you felt like you're on a course that it's hopeful.
I'm definitely on to something.
Yeah.
Things are being shown to me. I have been blessed in a lot of ways that I never thought about. And I just, I'm aware now.
Yeah. Bob, we've done, this is our 8th episode, and while they are all moving stories, there's, just like each of us, we have personalities that are different. Some of us have freckles, and some of us has blue eyes and whatever. Your story is no different. It's got a specialness to it and a sincerity to it that I've really enjoyed listening to. And I think it speaks to a lot of men and women listening to the show tonight.
Well, thank you.
And thank you. Luke, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but Bob may take our job one day. I'm not really sure.
He could.
He could at that. He's done extraordinarily well. So, Bob, we want to thank you for being
Thanks
a part
again,
of Restless
guys.
the podcast. Good night.
Thank you for listening to episode 8 of Restless the podcast, titled The Quest, featuring Bob. We here are restless to find the one who said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." For whom is your heart restless? And for today, for whom does your heart search for?